Ghost Frequency.
Today's episode, Prophets for Profit. A hard look at false prophecy, the men who weaponize God's name, and the one book they claim to follow, that warns you explicitly about them. Segment 1. The Standard. What the Bible actually says. Let's start with the text these men wave like a flag, Deuteronomy 18, verse 22. You want to know if a prophet speaks for God? Here's the test. Simple, brutal, and unambiguous. If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously. Do not be afraid of him. Not give him another chance. Not wait for the next prophecy. Do not follow him. Matthew 7:15 doubles down. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. The Bible's own fraud detection system is built in. So why do millions still follow men who have failed that test? Repeatedly, publicly, and by their own written record. Segment 2. Herbert W. Armstrong, The Paper Trail. Herbert W. Armstrong founded the Worldwide Church of God in the 1930s and built a media empire, the World Tomorrow radio broadcast, the Plain Truth magazine, millions of followers. He called himself an apostle. He implied he was one of the two witnesses in Revelation. He told his flock they were the one true church, and he made prophecies, specific ones, dated ones. In 1953, Armstrong predicted Christ would return by 1975. He told members to prepare financially, spiritually, physically for Misalwin for the end. Families sold homes. Members didn't save for retirement. Children weren't sent to college because, according to Armstrong, there was no future to plan for. 1975 came. Nothing happened. He had previously predicted in 1938 that Hitler would win World War II and usher in the Great Tribulation. He predicted in the 1950s that the U.S. would fall to a European superstate by the early 1970s. None of it materialized. By Deuteronomy's standard, the standard of Armstrong's own Bible, he was a false prophet. 3 times over, at minimum. But here's what false prophets do when prophecy fails. They reframe. Armstrong told followers the prophecy was delayed due to their lack of faith. The failure became their fault. This is a classic manipulation loop. The leader is never wrong, only the followers are insufficient. Segment 3. Gerald Flurry and the Philadelphia Church of God. When Armstrong died in 1986, his Worldwide Church of God began walking back his teachings. One man refused, Gerald Flurry. In 1989, Flurry founded the Philadelphia Church of God and declared Armstrong's writings, specifically Mystery of the Ages, to be divinely inspired scripture, on par with the Bible itself. He later declared himself a prophet, then an apostle, and eventually, and this is not satire, that prophet, a title drawn from John 1, which he applied to himself. Flurry has continued Armstrong's prophetic tradition in the most literal sense. He keeps making predictions that don't come true. He predicted for years that a specific sequence of geopolitical events would unfold imminently, centering Germany, Britain, and the Middle East. He has tied political figures, most notably Donald Trump, to biblical prophecy, suggesting Trump's political fate is intertwined with the end times. And here is where prophecy becomes propaganda. Segment 4. God does not endorse politicians. Let's be direct. No politician is endorsed by God, not Trump, not Obama, not any leader of any nation in any era, at least not in the way these preachers mean. When a preacher tells you a specific candidate is chosen by God, ask yourself, who benefits? Because tying political prophecy to tithing is an extraordinarily effective fundraising mechanism. If the candidate wins, the prophet is validated. If he loses, it's spiritual warfare, and you need to give more. Romans 13 tells Christians that governing authorities exist, and believers should respect them. It does not say God hand selects American presidents. The prophetic endorsement of politicians is a revenue model dressed in religious language. It keeps congregants emotionally dependent, politically activated, and financially giving. Flurry's PCG reportedly requires 3 tithes, one for the church, one for the feast, one for the poor. Members have reported donating 30% or more of their income. In exchange, they receive a closed information environment where outside media is discouraged and the prophet's word is final. Segment 5, Preaching Armageddon into Existence. There is something darker here than financial exploitation. When you preach Armageddon obsessively, when every earthquake, every election, every geopolitical shift is mapped onto end times prophecy, you don't just predict catastrophe, you begin to cultivate it. Followers who believe the world is ending don't invest in it. They don't build bridges, metaphorical or literal. They disengage from civic life, from science, from diplomacy. Some actively welcome escalation in the Middle East because they believe it hastens Christ's return. This is not fringe. This thinking influences foreign policy lobbying, voting behavior, and billions of dollars in donations to organizations that have a vested interest in tension, not peace. The prophets of Armageddon are not just wrong. They are, in a measurable way, making the world more dangerous. Outro. The Bible they read tells them clearly, test the prophet, check the record. If he's wrong, walk away. Herbert Armstrong was wrong. Gerald Flurry has inherited that legacy. You don't need a prophet to tell you who to vote for. You don't need a preacher to read the news for you through an apocalyptic lens. And you don't owe anyone 30% of your income for the privilege of being misled. The wolves are wearing very nice suits these days. Do the reading, ask the questions, and remember, the most powerful thing a false prophet fears is a person who thinks for themselves. I'm Ghost, and this has been Prophets for Profit, a Haunted Strings production. If this episode made you think or made you uncomfortable, that's exactly what it was supposed to do. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a review. We'll be back next week. Until then, question everything, especially the things you were never supposed to question. Thanks for listening. End.